March 2021. My name is Kwame Usudas. Welcome to the News Review segment here on Pan African Television. It's a pleasure to come here with the morning show. This morning, we're touching on a number of issues, 2 African stories to be precise. Africa urged not to lose faith in AstraZeneca. This name, every time I get confused. Anyway, Jabs, that has been captured by the Daily Graphic newspaper. Also, you know that the president of Tanzania is dead. We're told that he died as a result of COVID-19 complications. We'll touch on that briefly. Guta Gau angry at government. It's on the front page of the Insight newspaper. Police clamp down on Galamsey's. That's Ghanaian Times. Fiscal consolidation measures threaten Ghana's growth. Business analysts. Well, I think there was a little challenge here. Fiscal. All right. And then, if we have the time, we'll discuss Domelovu snubbing the audit service. I think that's also on the front page of the Inside newspaper. Good morning to you, Mr. Pratt. Good morning to you, Elvis. Good morning to you, Honorable. So, Elvis, let's go to Africa. Tanzania. I'm told you love Magufuli.
This is your mischief, so good morning to our cherished viewers. I'd like to say good morning to my 2 powerful uncles, Uncle Pratt and Uncle Inusa Fuseni, and your good self, whom I share birthday with, and which is upcoming soon. Yeah, so it's another great day and sad indeed for the people of Tanzania. And by solidarity, all of us Ghanaians, that we've lost the sitting president of Tanzania, John Joseph Magufuli. I think that in the first place, it's not pleasant to lose any life. But as we would know, death is inevitable, and it is only the completion of life, as Plato will put it. I think that it's a moment for another sober reflection that in this life, it's not about whom you are or what you are. It's not about the power you wield. It's not about, the financial empire you have. It's not about the control and authority you exert. But in the end, there will be death. We are told that Magufuli's death actually arises suspiciously as a result of COVID-19 and its related complications.
Absolutely.
And so for me, the awakening view here should not even be the particular death of Magufuli, but it has to be the basis for which we know that COVID is real and a respecter of no person, and to be able to continue to do what is right in terms of policy, in terms of direction, and in terms of, implementation of relevant measures so as to be able to curb infections. For me, it's a sad thing. As for Magufuli and his ups and downs, and the pretentious claim from some quarters is that he was one of the most incorruptible, it's not one in this moment of grief that I want to delve into. But our hearts goes out to the people of Tanzania, the Tanzanian people, all other members of government, and all other African countries in solidarity with the vision of growth for Africa. Our hearts goes out to all of them.
Thank you very kindly, Elvis. Honorable.
I continue from where he calls me uncle, so my nephew Elvis has ended. But also to acknowledge your good self, my brother Kusiprat, Elvis, and your cherished viewers and listeners. I think that it's proper on occasions like this to extend our sincere condolences to the people and government of the Republic of Tanzania. We have lost an African leader, the leader of a country, a sovereign state in that direction. A leader who evokes controversy, who is conflicted in many ways, but who himself, as leader with that COVID, has risen up to the challenge of delivering infrastructure for the people of Tanzania, has risen up to the challenge of providing primary and secondary education for the people of Tanzania. In fact, Tanzanians today remember him not for his covert denial, but for what he came to do for them. In doing that, he became increasingly autocratic. He was not tolerant of other dissenting views. And so, as he continued to rule, he was touted as a dictator. Now, but people will remember Magufuli for his stance against COVID-19. You know, we have always said that science should lead the discussion in the fight against COVID-19 and not emotions. And Magufuli denied the existence of COVID-19. He told, I mean, he made ridiculous assertions against COVID-19.
True.
At the point he said that a pawpaw had COVID-19, a dog had COVID-19, and all those things. There is strong suspicion that Magufuli succumbed to COVID-19. However, the vice president, what's her name? Samira Suluhu Hassan, said that he died out of heart complications.
Yeah, I think that's
And so, like my brother said, this is not the time to review the life of Magufuli on set. Maybe there will be another time for that. But the Tanzanians are mourning, and like Shakespeare advised long ago, you at this point don't speak ill of the dead. You join the people of Tanzania to mourn the death of their leader. And this is a Pan-African TV station. So we join our brothers and sisters in Tanzania to mourn the passing of their leader.
Thank you very kindly. Mr. Pratt, please.
Well, this story is coupled with another story, which is a call on Africans not to lose faith in the AstraZeneca vaccine. And I think that it is probably important that the two stories are done.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Magufuli was one person who was coronavirus denier. And all of them, or most of them, have suffered attacks by the disease. They include President Trump of the United States of America, Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, and the leader of the Philippines, and so on. Now, some of these leaders have made absolutely ridiculous claims. Magufuli, for example, believed that prayer was sufficient to fight the pandemic, and actually urges people to constantly go to church. Indeed, there was one person who never missed a church service, and yet the indications are that Corona has taken him down and finally taken him out. You know. For me, this should be an important lesson for people like him who attempt to defy science. And you can't defy science, but they attempt to defy science. And the process, they look absolutely ridiculous. What is important is that it is not only Magufuli. I mean, he's one of the extreme cases, you know, but he's not the only one who is engaged in COVID denial and who is not approaching the fight against the pandemic with seriousness. Available evidence indicates that most African leaders are like Magufuli. Most of them are like Magufuli. He took his to ridiculous heights, but some of them have stayed moderate. Now, why do I say this? Recent surveys have shown that the data available in Africa doesn't tell us enough about the spread of the disease in Africa. For example, studies which were done in Nigeria revealed that although the Nigerian government insists that COVID cases in Lagos was just around 53,000, the real figure was around 4 million. Look at the gap. So how is the Nigerian president different from Magufuli? It is just because he keeps his things to his chest and doesn't talk much. Magufuli was talkative and therefore exposed, his ignorance and his attempt to deride science and so on. But all the other African leaders are doing the same. Indeed, Tanzania declared itself COVID-free not too long ago, and soon after that, a former premier of this state in Tanzania, I just forgot, a former premier died, also from COVID complications. Now, the joke about Magufuli got extended when only 2 days ago, his vice president said that Magufuli had not been seen in public because he was very busy. And that presidents don't have to be seen in public every day. And yet they knew that the man was dying. Now the government of Tanzania tells us that he died from complications related to a heart condition. Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Everybody knows that he was taken down and out by COVID. I think, look, we better take this virus seriously. This is a virus which is constantly mutating and leaving scientists in a quandary. You understand? It's so constantly mutating that there are even speculations that the viruses we have developed now may not work tomorrow, and that we may have to design and produce new vaccines which will be more relevant given the extent to which the virus is mutating. This virus has taken down more than 2 million people throughout the world, 2.5 million people throughout the world. It's killed more than 2.5 million people throughout the world, and we ought to take it serious. My worry is that a lot of African countries have stopped contact tracing, which is vital, which is absolutely necessary for the control of the disease. Many African countries are not doing random mass testing, and Ghana is one of those countries not doing random mass testing. Now, if you don't do random mass testing, how do you determine the extent of the disease? So African governments, or most African governments, are actually playing with the lives of our people. And it is not surprising. Their management of the national economies, their perspectives on global affairs and so on, all betray the African people. And I'm not surprised that even in the area of fighting disease, this betrayal of the African people has become manifest. If you take Ghana, and you look at what our officials say and the situation on the ground, you feel sad. You take a country like Ghana, and Accra, the capital, Accra, I'm not talking about the greater Accra region. The capital, Accra, is estimated to have over 4 million residents. And yet, the hospital dedicated for the management of COVID in Greater Accra, in the whole region, has only 32 beds. Only 32 beds. I mean, that's ridiculous to the extreme. Doctors have been calling for the creation of dedicated outpatients departments. It has not been done. And yet, every now and then, we hear propagandists and officials telling us that Ghana indeed is the best country in the world when it comes to the management of COVID-19. If Ghana is the best country the best country in the world, then the world is doing something really horrible. This is Ghana's situation. I mean, 32 beds for a population of close to 5 million people, 32 beds. And we are clapping for ourselves and claiming, and in the same breath, we claim that we have excellently managed COVID-19. But when it comes to the economy, we say COVID-19 is responsible for all our economic problems. Now, if you have excellently managed your COVID-19 cases and so on, it should also reflect in the management of the economy. The two don't jive, you know. So Magufuli is gone. Everybody says that when human beings die, we have to be sorry. Okay, so to that extent we are sorry. But our being sorry does not take away the fact that he was a terrible manager. Because in this day and age, managers who do not take account of science in their planning and the execution of their plans are not worthy of any praise. You understand? The Western countries are praising Magufuli to the high heavens for improving infrastructural development in Tanzania. And they say that he was an anti-corruption fighter and so on. The West, who haven't they praised? Who hasn't the West praised? Remember Emperor Jean Bedel Bokassa? When he first came onto the scene, he was praised. Praised by France, praised by all of them and so on. And yet this was just a flipping, crazy dictator. Hell-bent on wasting his country's resources on medals and so on for himself. You understand? So as for praises from the West, I take them with a pinch of salt. Indeed, all the leaders that the West has hated, they have turned out eventually to be those who are focused on moving Africa forward. And we can mention the names, you know, Ahmed Sékou Touré, you know, Modibo Keita of Mali, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Patrice Lumumba of the Congo, and so on. These were the leaders who wanted to change the paradigm of development in favor of Africa. These were the leaders who were committed to Africans controlling their own resources and exploiting those resources for their own benefit. So when the West starts to praise leaders, I get worried. I mean, it's the signal that those leaders are not doing the right things and so on. So here we are, Magufuli is gone. Our condolences to the people who loved him, and I don't think that there were many, you know. So our condolences to the people who loved him. And yeah, he will soon be buried. 14 days of national mourning have been declared for him.
Yeah.
And the world will look at his legacy in not the same way that the world will look at the legacy of Jair Bolsonaro and Duterte and Trump and others. He is in that category.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. We are streaming live on our Facebook page, which is Pan African Television, and we are also on Twitter as Pan African TV. If you want to share with us what your thoughts are, kindly do so via these outlets, and I will try and read them out for you. We're also on WhatsApp, so the WhatsApp number will be on the screens right now. Share with us what your thoughts are, and we will read it. Let's come back home and discuss some domestic stories here. Guta Gau angry at government is captured on the front page of the Inside newspaper. Let's find out why they are upset. The Agriculture Workers Union and the Ghana Union of Traders Association, two prominent organizations which play various roles in the value chain and sustenance of the economy, have expressed anger at the government's subsidized fertilized seed policy and the recently announced hikes in taxes. According to the General Agriculture Workers Union, farmers across the country are not enjoying the full impact of government subsidized fertilized seeds due to the distribution of inappropriate seeds and or grains, which in turn reduces the germination population of farmers' yields. It would be recalled that government, as part of efforts to enhance agricultural productivity and also bring so-called relief to farmers, announced that a total of 270 million Ghana cedis would be spent on its national fertilizer subsidy. This amount is claimed represented an almost 50% price cut for beneficiary farmers in both organic and inorganic fertilizers. Guta disagrees, says the General Secretary for GAU, Mr. Edward Karewe, said as much as the figures for the subsidy of fertilized seeds have been growing, the full impact of it the benefit of it has not gotten to farmers. He contended that there have been instances where farmers have been given the wrong seeds which are not certified. He told Accra-based FM station that sometimes they are given grains instead of seeds. So if you get the grain for the seed, then your germination population will be low, and that will eventually affect your total output since the plant population will be low. And he also spoke about the that less than 50% is actually being subsidized, further raising concerns about its implementation, saying the subsidy, spoke about the subsidy, etc., and all of that. Now, also went on to speak about issues relating to the operations and lamented about the increase in taxes. Spoke about Joseph Paddy, Communications Director for the union, says the increment in taxes have come at the wrong time. Reading the 2021 budget in Parliament, Majority Leader and the Minister. So it goes on and on and on and on. Elvis, I think now we have a fair understanding of what their plights are.
Yeah, I think very legitimate plights there, and it is a call on the state institutions, the relevant government agencies, to hold the bull by the horn, because the practical effect of this matter boils to the very important role agriculture in particular, serves the economy and GDP of the country.
Absolutely.
And so for you to have, the workers of the agri sector being highly despondent over matters that are purely technical in nature and goes to the very bottom of productivity, I think that the general populace would have to be more worried even than these group of farmers who actually feed us and our generations. So I think that very genuine concerns there. We have the Crop Research Institute. We have all such other, allied agri agencies into scientific research for agricultural productivity. So to the extent that, improved seeds and such other implements such as fertilizers, which actually are highly subsidized, especially under this government, policy-wise, very good. But if you begin to record a situation where some of these complaints are coming up, that prices of some of these subsidized goods, which is a clear-cut policy, are even on the increase, then it means that someone somewhere is up to some nefarious activities that must be immediately kept and arrested. Because government can't pass down a subsidy, and in the end, people create artificial shortages just to be able to amass, personal aggrandizements and, selfish satisfactions. I think that it is outrightly wrong and condemnable. I share in the pain and the plight of these people. Now you look at the working nature of the agri sector, then you come to trade. You realize that they are highly interconnected.
Okay.
Because the entire agricultural value chain ends with the marketability of the product, be it within the domestic market or in the international market.
So that's true.
It ends at that particular bit where the consumer now benefits it. So if at the end of the day, at the very level of production, all right, we are suffering these challenges, the lack of improved seeds, where grains are sold in place of improved seeds, then it tells us that in the end, what we are expected to take to the market will be of low quality, will be of low grade. What it means is that people have to buy it at a very, very worse price, very low price, because it cannot meet the quality standard for which industry might need it. And for the international market, for purposes of exports, which unfortunately is not too good for us, it means that even the little we could have done will be cut off. And so in the end, it comes back to affect us at the stock market. The CD is affected because dollarization will begin to happen. And so it's a whole effect. I think I'm too passionate about this. And I think that the authorities, government, the ministries responsible for these areas, let us look at it. Let us set up a task force. Let us look at what is happening, who are behind these matters, and begin to address them. If we can do that, I think that we can have a more sustainable measure. Remember, KOD, this links directly to a recent story in India. Was it India we were discussing? Yes, just a few weeks, 2-3 weeks ago. Where, So we shouldn't get to some of those stages.
Yeah, the demonstration.
Otherwise, before you realize we'll be
I think it was in India.
Yes, it was in India. I recall. So that will be my bite on this matter.
Okay, but there are some other allied issues that were also, brought to the fore. For instance, they looked at the gaming issue. The gaming has become a major income earner all across the globe. The influx of online betting and automation of the once totally manual process has changed the character of revenue sources from that industry, etc. So they also touched on taxation, for instance, which has become topical.
Yeah.
We will look at the fiscal issues later on, but I think that on the basis of this particular topic, you can also touch on the concerns they raised.
Oh yes, so I think that basically I was reserving issues of that component.
Then let me respect that. Let me respect that. Honorable, please.
The Insight has put together two very important stories in one. That is the story about GUTA, the Union of Traders, Ghana Union of Traders, and then the story of GAU. They're two different stories. Yeah. GAU is lamenting the fact that government policy on subsidized fertilizer appear to be running into difficulties. Government has said that it was going to subsidize, or the policy of government is to subsidize the cost of fertilizer to about 50%. GAU disputes that. GAU says that when you work the percentages, the subsidy is not 50%. So that's the first problem they are raising. And the distribution itself is a problem. Now, government and all governments have tried to do that. That you can't continue to rely on old farming methods. In the past, when we were growing up, our fathers cultivated their maize. And upon harvesting the maize, when you were processing the harvest, they looked at the corn or the maize that had grown fatter, that was unlike the other ones, that had some properties and attributes that they thought could be turned into seeds. So they selected them and treated them as seeds, preserved them for the next farming season. Experiment shows that that is not the best way of farming practices, because if the seeds that you planted were afflicted, you carry the genes you always in the seeds, you will always reproduce. So at a time, their reproduction level will diminish, and that is why governments has introduced the improved seeds. We have a challenge with that. There are charlatans who are introducing seeds into the system, which seeds do not bring about the necessary germination that is expected of seeds bought from the seed producers. So there are difficulties. So they are raising these difficulties for government to know that it ought to do something about the policy, and that farmers could be suffering the impact. I'm able to talk about this because 2 years ago, my own personal experience, 2 years ago, I bought seeds from the Ministry of Agric and planted those seeds. I got less than 50% germination.
Wow.
When in actual fact, the seeds have to give you more than 95% germination. I got less than 50%. germination. So how did the seeds come into the system? And government has subsidized. Could simply be that somebody had repackaged grains. Grains are those that we eat. Those produced for commercial consumption. And someone had simply repackaged them, got into the system, and it was treated as seeds. And so it's important. Now coming back again home, I think that the Agricultural Workers Union ought to be talking about market.
Absolutely.
It's market. Farmers need market. Subsidy is good, but market is the best. Now look, when they produce their crops, they should be able to sell. And that is why the policy introduced by Professor Mills to establish the buffer stock and continued by John Mahama and Nana Akufo-Addo should be commended. You see, Ghana imports more than $600 million worth of rice. We are being told by the farmers that we import tomatoes. They are contradicting Nana Akufo-Addo. That we import tomatoes from where? Burkina Faso. Afrancho, where is the tomatoes that we were producing at Afrancho? In the Den Brunner region. What are the irrigation facilities at Tono and Via doing? Why are the farmers not producing the tomatoes? Why do our market women have to travel to Burkina Faso to bring in tomatoes? These are matters that should agitate the mind of government now, especially now that we are in deep crisis. COVID has exposed the underlying weaknesses in the economy. We are in a deep hole. Your mama has said so many years ago that we are eating the flesh, the meat, the bone. This time we are chewing the bones. There's no meat. We are not chewing the bones. So this is time for government to turn its attention to areas of the economy that can catalyze growth and cut down on the use of foreign exchange. And one such area is the agriculture sector. And that is why I should commend GAU for this their statement. My good friends, the Ghana Union of Traders, have a case. Their case is simply that they think that taxation is good, but they do not think that this is the proper time to tax them. Ghana's economy is already down. Businesses are slow. People's income have died. And now they are struggling to resuscitate themselves. And then you are taxing them. So they think that the problem with the taxation now is that it will have a negative consequence on the recovery process. And that's why they are raising this issue with the plethora of taxes that have been imposed. And I agree with them. Elsewhere, you don't do taxes. You do stimulus. How do I get, if there was a company manufacturing, for instance, processed or dealing in processed foods, and that company is collapsing, how do I make sure that I give them resources to continue to manufacture and send out? How do I, and export? How do I make sure that that happens? The energy sector drives the growth, because without power, you're not able to put your machines 24/7 at work. How do I ensure that power outages become a thing of the past? And in doing so, how do I ensure that the fuel that is needed for the power is cheap fuel? And cheap fuel, by cheap fuel, I mean we use gas more or hydropower more than crude, light crude or heavy crude. How do I do that? And so, yes, they also have a problem, but like Elvis has said, we will come to the fiscal consolidation measures which threatens Ghana's growth and will deal with all the fiscal impacts. But I commend them for raising these matters at this critical event in this country.
Well, thank you, Mr. Pratt, please.
Well, I think what the General Agricultural Workers Union is saying has been known for a very long time. In spite of all the noise about planting for food and jobs and so on, this country's agriculture is simply, at least plant agriculture, is simply dying.
The sound is bad.
You know, in the past, our farmers produced their own seeds. Now we've come to the point where we are supplying hybrid seeds to farmers. And the capacity of farmers to produce their own seeds has totally diminished. So our farmers have become dependent on multinational corporations for the supply of seeds. You understand? And this is a most dangerous development for agriculture anywhere in the world. When farmers lose control over seeds. So we have a situation where every season, farmers have to find extra money to go and buy seeds. And if they cannot buy seeds and so on, then they're in trouble. Food Sovereignty Ghana and other organizations, including the General Agricultural Workers Union, have been drawing government's attention to this for many years, and nobody listens. You know, eventually we will kill plant agriculture in our country. You know, because if you don't control seeds, how do you control anything in plant agriculture? Simply doesn't make sense. And yet there's an area that nobody is thinking about and nobody is making efforts to institute measures which will give us basic, fundamental, basic control over seeds and so on. Now government insists that as part of its Planting for Food and Jobs program, it has made fertilizers available at subsidized prices, and they claim that the subsidy is as much as 50%. The Peasant Farmers Association, GAU, and other organizations in agriculture are telling us that the fertilizer does not reach the farmer. We've had stories where truckloads of fertilizer were seen being smuggled to neighboring countries and so on. Now, the farmers have done the calculation, and they are telling us that even the 50% subsidy is not true. You understand? Some of these farmers used to enjoy free fertilizers.
Yeah.
And when they were enjoying free fertilizers, the fertilizers was getting to them and so on. Now, it's not just about fertilizer. The farmers are also complaining that even things like tractors and so on that we import and which are supposed to be sold to them at subsidized rates and so on, find their way into Burkina Faso, into Togo and other places, and that they are not the beneficiaries of all of these subsidies. We should be worried about it. You understand? What is the success of Planting for Food and Jobs if farmers lose control over seeds? What is the success of Planting for Food and Jobs if in the final analysis, subsidized products meant to improve agriculture do not get to the farmers? And even when they get to the farmers, they get to the farmers at exorbitant prices and so on. So I think it is time to listen to the General Agricultural Workers Union, to listen to the Peasant Farmers Association, and to listen to Food Sovereignty Ghana, and to begin to take some measures which will ensure that at least plant agriculture, develops, moves forward, and so on.
Well, thank you, Mr.
For,
okay, right, I thought you were done, sorry.
As for the traders and so on, their problems are numerous. And in fact, since the 2021 budget was announced, they have been crying about the level of taxation, crying about, unnecessary bureaucracy and so on. And they are not the only people crying. The trade unions are crying. You understand? I mean, if you read today's papers, there are several appeals to government to cushion the impact of these reckless taxes, on the population. There is something that I'm finding very difficult to understand. Because I recall that 2014, 2015, and 2016, His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's mantra was that generating resources for development, if it depends largely on taxation and borrowing, is the lazy man's option. And that the way to go is to use production, those are his words, production, as a means of generating needed resources. What happened to that mantra? What happened to that perspective for national development? Now, this government has borrowed more than any other government. In fact, the threshold we've reached now is such that borrowing will soon not become an option to us. Understand that they're about to borrow another $5 billion, from the Eurobond market and so on. $5 billion. When already we are spending close to 90% of your total national revenue plus grants on debt servicing and debt repayment. This is not a sustainable development option for us. You cannot sustain it. It is not sustainable. It doesn't make sense. And this is affecting not just traders and workers and so on. It's affecting everybody. Now, the thing that worries me very deeply is the fact that when it comes to the implementation, in fact, the design and implementation of these measures, we have avoided stratification. I mean, normally, when governments want to impose taxes and so on, they are careful to ensure that these taxes do not affect the vulnerable in society. And in fact, the general tax principle is that those who have more, we tax them more. Now we have a government which is taxing everybody equally. Doesn't matter whether you're poor or rich, the same taxations apply to you and so on. So that system of taxation, which does not discriminate in favor of the poor, it's itself problematic. Now, I'm very deeply worried, because some of the people in power, indeed most of the people in power, are people that I have worked with over the years. And I know why we work together. And we came together to resist the introduction of the value-added tax. In the process, people died. Ghanaian people died, including a school child, Ahunu Honga. They died. Because we told them, we encouraged them to demonstrate against the value-added tax. We told them that the imposition of the value-added tax was not in their interest. And yet my friends and colleagues and comrades and so on, who were involved in this fight, anytime they get the chance to be near government, the first thing they do is to increase VAT. I want to sincerely apologize to the family of Ahunu Honga, because I was part of it. I think we were going to increase VAT when we got the chance to rule this country. Why did we push people to their death? Why were so many people injured and so on? If, in the final analysis, we were going to increase VAT. I feel embarrassed. I really feel embarrassed by this development. That the people who organize massive demonstrations against VAT are the people today who are increasing VAT. They've forgotten the reasons they gave for mobilizing hundreds of thousands of people into the streets. Kwame, I can't believe this. We who happen to be in the public space, not because we are the most intelligent people in this country, not because we are more knowledgeable than other people and so on, we happen to be in this public space as a matter of privilege. I sit here today not because I'm the wisest person in this country, not because I love Ghana more than everybody else. I sit here today not because I have more information than everybody else. I sit here today as a consequence of privilege. And I think we have to recognize that privilege. And the only way to recognize that privilege is to ensure that we always act in the interest of our people. You understand? Always act in the interest of our people. Otherwise, it would amount to an abuse of privilege. And we have been abusing this privilege which has been conferred on us by virtue of our education, by virtue of our class position, by virtue of so many things. We have been abusing this privilege over the years. I have said that we ought to be careful. Because the people of Ghana, like people everywhere in the world, cannot take this forever. A time will come when the people of Ghana, like the people everywhere, like people everywhere, like people in the UK, like people in everywhere, will one day wake up and say we've had enough of the burdensome privilege of the elite, of the reckless elite, whose policy designs and implementation have crippled our society. And when that time comes, we will have nobody to blame but ourselves for our recklessness, our complete recklessness, which is exacerbating poverty in our society, which is limiting access to social services by the majority of our people and so on. Can you believe that the 2021 budget actually envisages increases in what they call toilet fees? Fees for public toilets are being increased. Who are those who go to the public toilet? I mean, we should be very careful. The elite of this country needs to be very, very careful.
Well, now thank you, Mr. Pratt. Well, so if you are on social media, just leave us a message and we will read it out for you. It's very disturbing. But Honorable, maybe Honorable.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe you want to touch on the taxation issues, or perhaps let me just introduce the next topic, and then you find a way of roping that in. Fiscal consolidation measures threaten Ghana's growth. And that's on the front page of Business Analyst newspaper. And I believe you can find a way of bringing this issue of taxation into the conversation. Please.
You see, Ghanaians ought to understand, and by now we have appreciated, that anything the MPP government says, they should take it with a pinch of salt. When I was driving here, I thought that even the free senior high school education that we have since touted, maybe by the end of the year or during the course of the supplementary budget, government will have a cause to say that we should even pay for it. Because apparently, the MPP government never intended anything to be free. But they knew that elections was coming, and so they decided to hoodwink us into believing that they were going to give us free water and they was going to give us free electricity. But as a neoliberal, that there's nothing on earth. There's nothing free. There's nothing free. It is not free. We were insulted and insulted. Mr. Kwasi Pratt even made a prediction that we will pay for this water. We will pay for it. He was lambasted. So I mean, he was lambasted. This is the kind of propaganda. You can't rule this country with propaganda. In fact, if you mess up with the lives of the people, you'll be exposed as you continue to rule. This is what has come to us. I mean, we had always known that we will pay for what the freebies one way or the other. We had always known. When the Nana Akufo-Addo said that the development of this country and the utilization of the oil resources was a matter of choice. I remember I posted on Facebook that he needs to be reminded that choice have consequences, or choices have consequences. And so, if you choose to use all your oil revenue in funding free education, you must find money to do other things. Yes, choices have consequences.
Absolutely.
This is what the business analyst is saying. But even the business analyst, this report is an old report. And let me demonstrate, Mr. Conspirator, let me demonstrate why I think it's an old report. The business analyst says at page 3 of his report that enthuses the World Bank report, the financial deficit is expected to narrow to a pre-crisis level of around 5% of GDP by 2023. The annual cost of the government's measures to improve the financial sector averaged 2.3% of GDP between 2018 and 2020. And this is the most important that I want you to note. Since the financial sector reforms are expected to be completed in 2020, no further costs are expected in 2021, creating immediate fiscal space. So you see that report is old.
Yeah.
Why?
It's predicated on the financial sector reforms, correct?
Because it says since no financial sector expenses will be made in 2021,
yeah.
it will create fiscal space.
Absolutely.
And that's wrong.
Yeah.
Because Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has just told us that they will need 5.5 billion Ghana cedis to deal with the financial sector cleanup this year. So again, the fiscal space has been constrained. Now I told you, where have we gotten to where we have? That we need to consolidate our fiscal measures. We have gotten to where we are largely because of recklessness and the ambitious projects that was embarked upon by this government. Projects that were not going to yield any beneficial value for the people of this country. And let me demonstrate. Now, you go and say you are doing one district, one district, one dam, or what is it?
Yeah. One village, one dam.
One village, one dam.
One district, one factory.
The one village, one dam concept is a good concept. Its implementation was bogus. Bogus. No physical impact study of the one village, one dam has been done to show that it has increased agricultural production anywhere. So what did you do? Did you do it for water for the people? Or what? Bogus. Nobody can tell me that the one village, one dam concept has led to dry season gathering elsewhere in this country. So why did you do it? What was the intent? So this grandiose project, or this project that you embarked on, what was it intended to achieve? Secondly, with all the expenditure that was being done on reckless projects like the one district, one village, one dam, COVID hit us. And then just expose our vulnerabilities. Just expose the vulnerabilities. The first attempt by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to deal with COVID was to order the Minister of Finance to do what? To go and borrow $100,000. You remember?
Yes.
His first broadcast,
yes,
in which he made those orders before he brought the emergency powers to Parliament. After the 100,000, Nana Akufo-Addo attacked the stabilization fund and removed all the money in the stabilization fund for the purposes of fighting COVID, which was about $600 million. Now, he didn't stop there. He ran to the IMF and took a facility, rapid something facility, budget support of $1 billion that went into the fight for COVID. All these monies were taken because we didn't have any money anywhere. We didn't. There was no money. He didn't stop there. He went to the Bank of Ghana. Nana Akufo-Addo went to the Bank of Ghana and took 10 billion Ghana cedis. 10 billion Ghana cedis. Can you imagine? So where is the money? Little wonder that these people are saying that, government is saying that workers should not even expect salary increases because there's no money to pay them. The economy is stupid. We don't have resources at all. There's no money. And to tell us, like Ojon Pianin said last week, to even admit that we don't have money is difficult for this government. It's difficult. And so they are still promising one agenda 111, which even doesn't find space in the projects they are going to do. I mean, that does not understand. Now, so if you don't have money and countries are still being affected by COVID, what do? You have to go to Achampon's theory. Operation what?
Feed yourself.
And self-reliance. So now, we don't have money. We are going to borrow $5 billion from the Eurobond market. We don't even know after that whether we will get money. The earlier we started taxing. So that's why we are going to tax you for going to toilet. If you go to toilet, you pay tax. Somebody was dealing with the toilet. We are going to tax you for that. We are going to tax you for
Bola.
We are going to, the taxes. We are going to impose 1% on the national health insurance. Today, now if you have your money, you think that you can win more money and go and stake lotto, we tax the wins.
They're giving
we tax the wins. And tax the way they are doing business, and tax the business as well. And if the financial, when the Atamils, or who was that who brought it and they revolted, I remember Setekwe explaining laboriously that this was
the condom tax. Are you referring to the condom tax?
No, the condom tax. Okay. Financial sector.
Oh yeah.
Some businesses, if we did some businesses beyond a certain threshold, and we revolted, no, this time we pay. We are going to pay that one. And you know what we are going to pay?
Tell me.
It says that we spent a lot of money in dealing with the cleanup. And now there's no money. So we must contribute. All of us must contribute to deal with the cleanup. Hey, government is serious. Yeah, it's a serious business. Now you took a decision to collapse the banks. And now all of us must pay to deal with the consequences of that decision. Somebody.
Kojo said that decision was taken on behalf of the people. Everything government does is for the people.
Yeah, but we have to.
We have to.
When did you know about it?
He said we are all responsible for
When did you know about it? It's not when the budget was right. It's not when the budget was right.
Yes.
Yes. That's when I also knew about it. So we are going to pay taxes. We are going to pay. We are in a deep hole.
He describes it as black hole.
We are deep. The lower the rope there to get us out, we need this. That's what I've said, and going back to what I said about Greek. In times like this, governments, serious governments, look at areas that will reduce expenditure of foreign exchange, and also ensure that food is produced locally to feed the people. And we've done it before. I just told you about Operation Feed Yourself. When a champion was between the devil and the deep blue sea, the rock and the hard place, he came out with his 7 principles. Total manpower, development and deployment. Service to the people and those things. We have been there before. And this was a champion's reaction, his response to the difficulties that we were facing at that time. And because there was commitment and concerted effort towards that, the following year we were able to export food. There was no platform for food, but we exported food. People were encouraged to do gatherings in their homes. We exported food. So we've been here before. It's not entirely new. But for government to close its eyes and still be promising people, do you hear that during the election?
Free water.
Not free water. Teachers got motivation money.
Yes.
You get it?
I remember.
For 4 years, they were not giving motivation money. In 2020, teachers received motivation money. You think they won't pay? They won't pay for it. The loans they were giving them. The police, they were 419. Anyway, what I've said is that we have reached a very difficult stage in our lives. And the decisions require that we examine them carefully and see which ones will be beneficial to get us out of this quagmire in the long analysis.
Kojo Ponkrumah says it was free for the people, but not free for government. And that you don't expect, for instance, the independent power producer to say, because government says it's free light.
What is government?
Yeah, that's what he said.
What is government and people?
So we need to.
Kojo Ponkrumah doesn't understand that government, the artificial creation government, is an agent
of the people.
Of the people.
Absolutely, yeah.
That is why we vote every 4 years to either renew the agency relationship between us and the people, the artificial structure called government, or we remove them and put another people there. So they are supposed to, and the Constitution says it carefully, they are supposed to act in our interest and what? Welfare. But in this case, so what is free for the government? What is free for the people and not free for the government?
Because the government has to pay the independent.
If the government takes a reckless decision, they should be responsible for that decision. The people should hold that government, because the money is for the people. Government has no money. That brings me back to what who said it? Jumandia, or who said our democracy is failing. Our democracy is failing. Parliament is the keeper of the public purse. The president brings his policies and programs to Parliament and tells Parliament that this is what I want to do for this financial year. And I've done the cost analysis. And I will need X amount of money to be able to do it. Then Parliament then approves the programs and policies of government and the financial implications. That becomes the budget. Now, the government says that in my program or for the year, Parliament, you don't deserve the amount of money that you have asked for. Meanwhile, I'm the owner of the money, the keeper of the purse. They say, oh, you don't deserve it. So what is brewing in Parliament between the executive and the legislature is a must-watch situation, a must-watch situation. Because how can you tell people who are the keepers of the money that they are not entitled to the amount of money that they say they want? So for me, days are still ahead. We must tighten our belts.
Very well, very well. Elvis.
Why
I mean, this is the devil and the deep blue sea. I don't know.
No, I'm not caught in between at all. I'm not caught. No, you see,
this is an uncharted path.
No, it is a charted path. The reality is that there are certain things that we must interrogate, and to do so objectively, fairly, and without hate, used advisedly. And I think that the economy is one of such matters. And as I have always been principled, I'm going to discuss it dispassionate of too much, as you would know what it means. So I am not caught at all in between the devil and the deep blue sea. But to say that, indeed, we have been there before. Indeed, we have had a situation where nuisance taxes, so to say them, didn't start today, if at all it is happening today. We have recorded taxes on, you mentioned it, loose stuff like condom. Well, at the time, I supported it, because if you think that you can dangle your manhood irresponsibly around for pleasure, let us task you for protecting you from contracting perilous dangers like HIV/AIDS. But matches, simple cutlasses, essential drugs for BP patients are all things that once upon a time in this country were taxed.
Were to be taxed.
You understand? So at any point in time, the intention of government, as your government intended, was on the same path today which we are condemning. And this history and the present must be reconciled to the useful benefit of Ghana, and to say that it all boils back to the fact that we are failing to operate an export or a production-based economy. It is so because we have succumbed so much to Western markets and the influx of foreign goods, okay, without need for substitutes, even though we have a lot of it. Now, government acting on the basis of the relationship of agency for the governance of, I disagree that government stands alone from the people, because at the very primary nature of its definition, government is but for the people, by the people, and even of them. So it cannot be retheorized today that government exists in isolation from the will of the people from which it emanates. But the actions of successive governments have led us into a situation we must admit. A situation of a pressured and overburdened economy. And let us stop galvanizing matters with grammar. Today, you have an economy which suffers a 76.4% of GDP burdened on, if you like, a debts. Debts contracted to be able to sustain the very existence of the nation. There are times governments simply have no option. And in the instances we have suffered issues such as this, whether NDC or MPP government, you listen and you realize that, look, government has simply located itself in a very tight corner around which it can't turn. Today, the practical issues we are talking about here is because you are operating an economy that have for the past 10 years, and I am talking about 2011 to the expiration of 2020, an accumulation of about 11.7% of financial and energy sector cost. And when energy sector comes into this equation, you realize that the 4-year period of Dumsor must have then contributed hugely to the accumulation of this energy sector cost. Recall in 2006, 2007, we have very serious power issues in this country.
I do recall that, yes.
Then, around 2013 to 2016, again we suffered same. It's been quite stable until in the past, let's say 2020, and in the last few weeks of 2021, again, the power and energy situation extremely turbulent. The accumulated effect on the average is to compel an action of borrowing to power terminal and, if possible, import crude. So this 11.7% of financial and energy sector cost will further cause what the economy will say a shrink in the fiscal space. Why won't we find ourselves in this kind of situation? The effect is the kind of taxes we are seeing. But you don't also do so, then industry, production of even the little ones we are doing will stop, which means further imports into the country, and which means the situation will continue to worsen. Now, the World Bank have projected that, contrary to the ambitiousness in government development agenda, the nature of our fiscal regimes could by itself shoot down the very goals and objectives we have set. Because look, at the moment we are operating at what we call the financial crisis stage, because less than 70, in fact more than 70% of GDP to debts. So the only time we can talk about a safe economy and to be free from a relaxed taxation regimes from some of these petty staff now taxed is if we are able to create at least a sustaining 30-31% fiscal space. So the truth of the matter on technical grounds is that there is simply no option than to do what is happening now. So too much politicization of very practical issues by political pundits, the resultant effect.
Accumulated net effects, I agree with you. But the issue has been compounded by your own
And you want to treat that in isolation from the
No. You admitted, which is why, you know, previously
why I'm asking
those
you the
issues,
question.
those
Yes.
issues were resolved to a very large extent, right? What we are currently experiencing is not as a result of the shortfalls from 2015, 2016, or this is a creation of this current regime, and we must admit that. I mean, yeah.
I don't disagree with the figures, and if you have
Yes,
listened to my analysis, it's been a whole chain from Kufuor
Absolutely,
to date.
yes.
Okay, and I am saying that the 11.7% is the accumulated figure, and he knows that. You can make the argument that in the last 4 years, okay, the last 4 years have contributed to a chunk of it.
Absolutely.
Which I agree, because the figure is about 53.8%. So that alone accounts for up to about half of this. But I am saying that at the end of the day, whether government A or government B, the fact that we do not explore the options of an export-driven economy, you will find yourself in these situations. And both political parties that have ruled this country will come with manifestos that promises a drift from the normal or from the status quo. But when in government and confronted with realities, you find yourself in a situation such as this, and you have to create taxes. Else, you are having a situation of decision where you are caught between a tougher decision of pain such as this one, or a complete collapse, which will come with ramifications more worse and dangerous. So I do not find it pleasant. It is my position that I do not find it pleasant with the current budget, because I felt we could have been able to do better. But under the circumstances and the contributing effect of COVID-19, and like you mentioned, it is true that government didn't have reserves or luxury funds to confront COVID-19. But life was essential, and so it is clear and it's undeniable that government had to depend on external borrowings to be able to offer some intermediate relief on COVID-19. Again, contributing to, because that alone contributed to about 2.3% of the GDP. So if your fiscal space is narrowed, it's widened at that level, then clearly the backlash will be for you to now, after exhausting the international options, will be to have inward generations to salvage, or if you like it, to cushion situations in a way.
Well,
industry is suffering, and I share in their pain, and government is sincerely most sorry about these things. However, it is the immediate measure government can take on behalf of the people to address issues in a way, while looking at a long-term sustainable position, in order to make sure that even what is worse wouldn't happen. Now, the good news, and to conclude on that basis, is that the World Bank is helping project that if we are able to perform in terms of fiscal consolidation, we are able to perform in the real sector in achieving the 5% target by 2023. If we are able, that's the condition, if we are able to sustain what we are doing or improve a little on it in the real sector, then it is likely that by 2023 we would be able to lessen the burden on the fiscal space and to be able to operate at least about 69.8%, which is a pre-crisis stage. I think that is the consolation in this matter, and so government must be commended on those things, the parameters within which this estimate is made. Government must be praised, and government must be encouraged to actually do more, because it's a conditional issue. So you do worse, the issue will break, but you do better, the issue will rise. I think that leadership is when in such difficult moments you are able to balance off the left and the right to be able to. But I think that the conclusion is that we are not in the best of situations. So our energy supply system must be reconsidered. Akosombo was built for just 5 million people. Today, we are nearly 31 million, with very little done to consolidate that. Those are some of the arithmetic issues beyond the politics that can spell out the true picture on this particular matter. But we continue this way, we are in a shit.
Well, you're still watching the news preview segment on Pan African Television. I had 1,001 questions to ask you, but I'm not going to do that. Let me just quickly acknowledge Jar Rays for refreshing the newspaper review segment here on Pan African Television. You can call them on, this one is Pine Passion Fruit. You can call them on 054 087 054 087 for bulk purchases. Please call them now. Mr. Pratt, please.
But you know, I'm not one of those people who believes that the World Bank has answers to the problems of our country and Africa. Indeed, all so-called third world countries. If you look at the problems, most of our problems are the result of following the prescriptions of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The current neoliberal situation in which we find ourselves, which has led to a reduction to drawers of water and hewers of wood, has been imposed by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And I don't dwell so much on what they say. But what are they saying? And the statement is a very clear statement. Now listen to me carefully. This is on the front page of the Business Analyst newspaper. And the Business Analyst newspaper is edited by a friend of mine. What is his name? June 4. Now listen to the World Bank carefully. The World Bank, in its latest World Economic Outlook, has endorsed Ghana's plans to rein in its fiscal deficit over the next 3 years to within the 5.0% cap set by the currently suspended Fiscal Responsibility Act. However, the bank's economists do not believe this can be achieved. I mean, what is this rubbish? The bank is commending the government of Ghana for something which cannot be achieved. What is this rubbish?
When I read it, I was surprised at the editor, but that is your. I was surprised actually. And one of the reasons I didn't want to even discuss this topic on the basis of this paper. A lot of this.
It is not the editor of the paper. It is the bank. The bank is commending the government of Ghana for doing something which cannot be achieved. What is this rubbish? Answer, let's move forward.
Evo.
I'll finish.
I wanted more prophecies.
No, that's okay.
Anyway, all right.
And that is why I don't take the World Bank and the IMF and so on serious, you know. I mean, look at this. They said that what the government has promised cannot be achieved, but they are congratulating the government for it. And that is why sometimes when you look at World Bank, IMF reports, pro-government newspapers will carry on their front page banners. IMF commends government, the same statement. Then an anti-government newspaper, or independent newspaper will say, IMF condemns government, the same paper. They are commending government for something that they themselves know can never be achieved.
Right. Let's discuss some Domolevo, shall we? And I know what you're smiling. I can see that you're smiling behind the mask.
Domolevo.
Have you seen his response?
I've seen his response.
Sharp.
I've seen many things about Domolevo.
Yeah.
I have read even the amicus curiae brief filed by Occupy Ghana in court.
Yeah.
Which was seeking to challenge the interference of the board chairman in the performance of work of the Auditor General, and whether or not the president could direct the Auditor General to go on leave. So I've read a lot of things about Dumelevo. Dumelevo represents the new law in Nana Akufo-Addo's governance architecture, that a board chairman who is a creature of a statute inferior to the Constitution has power over a structure which is created by the Constitution. You don't get it.
I'm getting it.
No, you don't get it when you look, because Nana Akufo-Addo, until he became president, was touted as a human rights lawyer. He's not a human rights lawyer now. People have died. He has not even bothered to mention them. He doesn't care about the human rights of anybody. And then the Constitution creates an office. The Auditor General is an office. And then the law says that a legislation be passed to establish the audit service and the board of the audit service. The law is made by Parliament. Then the president appoints a board chairman for the service. And that board chairman now has more power than the constitutional creature.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
It does not make sense. I am very angry at
It doesn't make
the
sense.
position of the board chairman in particular.
It doesn't make sense.
I don't know what he's up to.
Yeah, I want you to have let's finish with honorable respect.
So now,
and then I'll come to you.
So now briefly,
That's finished. What else? Or you are not finished?
Well, so now briefly,
briefly.
and then the audit. I don't know what the relationship between the audit chairman and the Nana Akufo-Addo is, but the audit service chairman, is constantly embarrassing this government. Constantly. The man comes. We first of all say he should go on leave. He goes on leave. You barricade his door, change his locks, then appoint a new Auditor General. I mean the acting, and then he comes back after his leave. On that day that he returns to work, you say that he's on retirement by virtue of the operation of law, because he went to Social Security and saw that his date of birth was 1st June actually, 1960, and so he was retired 1st June or 31st May 2020. Now, so he at 9 o'clock. He leaves the office. The very day he came to the office, 9 o'clock, he leaves the office. The man he had handed over when he was leaving the office did not even come to hand over to him. Then all this service again, you now write to him to come and hand over. Like what? Yes, the man says, the letter from the presidency says that the man was on retirement when he was even on leave. That's what the letter is saying. The man was on retirement when in fact he was on leave. So I think that Nana Akufo-Addo's government should sit down. These little things create the impression that there are a lot of centers of power within this government, and there's no coherent whole within the government. The wishes of the board chairman always comes to pass when it has to do with Nana Akufo-Addo, and that is not good for government.
Right, Elvis, please.
Yes, I was just expressing my disgust on this matter, and that is exactly what has been said. I think that, yes, there can be these frictions, institutional frictions, but to the extent that appointees of government, and I'm talking about the board chairman, surely an appointee of government, betraying the very source of power for your appointment, that is my source of worry. He is consistently allowing Dumelevo, who have exercised great leadership in the audit sector, and we need men of principle like that in this country if we are to grow, is being allowed and given windows of opportunity to lash badly at government in a manner that actually repudiates the confidence the international community even have for the principles of this country and its government. So the problem is not Dumelevo and Nana Akufo-Addo. The problem is the board chairman. And I am surprised he's still board chairman, because it is very clear he knows nothing about what he is doing. It is clear that he lacks administrative logic in his approach to this matter. And I am not sure that that is the interest of the president, to be fighting Domilevo around and openly in a manner that doesn't really seem to have basis. Okay, so if the man was on retirement, wives on a compulsory leave, that action of the president, who had asked him to proceed on his accumulated leave, was not with mischievous goals. And it was lawful. What the president did was lawful. The intent
there was no malice
was not malice at all. Now, if Mr. Board Chairman thinks that someone who had retired on leave returned to office for a day, and upon his return, there was no re-handing over to him by the person he had handed over to, on what administrative grounds is he preparing what handing? Handing over what? You cannot hand over
something
what
that
you do not have.
You don't give what you don't have.
You understand?
Yeah.
It's a basic principle of logic.
Even in law.
Are you getting it? And so exactly.
You don't give what you don't have.
So what is this? So I rather believe that it is the board chairman who is embarrassing government and embarrassing Ghana. And for me, the nature of things, I have problem with anybody roping in the president in this matter. But I think that it is beginning to look as if there are personal scores to settle between Domilevo and the board chairman. That is how I am seeing it, and that is my opinion. I think that it is getting embarrassing. I think that it is not good for a government that is willing to fight corruption. I think that it is not the best approach for Mr. Board Chairman to handle or create that kind of perception on a president who, at least for the courage to even establish an additional state institution to fight corruption, that is the Independent Special Prosecutor's Office. I do not think that that would be. Now, if you listen to Domilevo himself, he will tell you on a number of occasions, he has said it openly on platforms, that his power and confidence to have driven the audit service in the manner he did was as a result of the empowerment and privilege he enjoyed from His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo. In terms of the opportunity to recruit more, in terms of the financial leverage he had, in terms of the logistics capacity he had. Domilevo himself, and it is on record, even when he went to speak to the people of Kenya, he said it there. So the president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is unblemished on this matter. Unblemished on this matter. But why Mr. Board Chairman have refused to advise himself on simple matters of administration principles, and have allowed this dramatic and comic interaction to be going on, is my source of worry. We need to look at that. I am told Domilevo has some job now in the international community. I don't know if that is true or not, but congratulations if that is so. I think that he's a real man.
Mr. Pratt, please.
Well, I've had some encounters with the chairperson of the Audit Service Board. And Honorable, I hope you remember. In the Kufuor era, I woke up one morning and I was listening to the newspaper headlines. And one of the headlines said that the Insight newspaper was owing tax. And the tax which was quoted was higher than taxes paid by the multinational corporations. I hope you remember. And this information was attributed to the Auditor General then, who happens to be the chair of the Audit Service Board today. And he had claimed that the accounts of the Insight had been audited. Kwame, I was lost. The account of the Insight, first of all, had not been audited by the Auditor General. And I didn't see why the Auditor General would audit the accounts of the Insight, not Graphic, not Ghanaian Times, not Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, but the Auditor General would focus on the Insight and auditors. The audit had never taken place. what is interesting is that 1 week before he made that statement, the Internal Revenue Service, IRS then, had actually written to the Insight and said we had overpaid our taxes and that we had credit. This is the man who is sitting at the head of the Audit Service today. He's the chairman of the Audit Service Board today. How can I believe what he says or what he does? This, and the matter was even raised in Parliament. I think it was the Honorable
Fighting this petrol increases a fighting government. So the way to do it was to kill his people.
So, Right Honorable Dweja, who then a member of Parliament, raised the matter in Parliament. Yes. And this man told Parliament that, oh, actually it was an exercise they were starting and that they were starting with the Insight. This man has been doing hatchet jobs for a long time and he's continuing, you know. My problem with my brother's submission is simply this. The president cannot be exonerated. Why? The final letter ordering Domelo to leave office was a letter written from the Flagstaff House and signed by the executive secretary to the president. How do you exonerate the president from this? Dweja is obviously doing a hatchet job, but he's doing a hatchet job on behalf of government. You understand? And this whole situation is embarrassing. If I were in government, I'd be very deeply embarrassed by this development. One man, Domelo. How can the whole government be afraid of Domelo to the extent that it's engaged in these things? Fighting all civil society organizations, even to the extent that organizations that Occupy Ghana and so on have expressed their public embarrassment of what is happening. Why? Why does government stab itself? Because this is a self-inflicted wound, totally unnecessary. What will Domelo do to this government? And you know the most ridiculous part? The declaration that he's a Togolese. Now, anybody who comes from the Volta region, who has problems with government or disagrees with government is a Togolese. What is this rubbish? And this is history. Some of you may not know that the UP tradition actually declared Nkrumah a non-Ghanaian. In fact, they said that Nkrumah was a Liberian. So if they disagree with you, they seize your Ghanaian nationality one time, sharp. That's the first thing they do. And if you happen to be unfortunate to come from the Volta region, then you must be a Togolese by all means. What is this rubbish? Master, let's move.
Anyway, let me read a few messages here. This one says, good morning to you. The actions by government to collapse banks was not participatory, and so was solely the government's directives to its financial institutions. Why should we pay for an error and failure of individuals like the VP Finance Minister and Governor of the Bank of Ghana? Azwa from Zuarungu sent him this message. KOD, please tell the Elvis to stop commenting on this issue. Even with the $1 billion from IMF, they did nothing to save Ghana. And we are now forced to limit our breathing with nose masks. From James in Kumasi. Good morning, I am Joe from Accra. Are public institution boards still in place?
This one has extended its own term.
Good morning to you, Kwame. As Elvis, who appointed the board chairman? If it's the president who appointed him, then who has to call him to order? Order. Philip from Takrady sent in this one. Good morning to you, KOD. Remind Elvis that we are in 2021 and not in 2016. Alex from D in Kwanta. Good morning to you. Please, don't mind the leadership of Guta and Gau. They are just playing propaganda. They are the same MPP people who are there from Kweku in Tesano. I thank your panelists for the non-partisan discussion. What I don't understand is the manner in which this country is being governed. The president and his captains are now taking Ghanaians for granted. How can you give something for free and ask the person to pay for it? Was it wrong referring to them as mafias? Kwesi from Oda says, good morning to you, KOD, and your panel, especially Uncle Pratt and Honorable Inusa, for saying the government cannot tell Ghanaians that there are no funds to support salary increment for workers. Where did the government get money to buy votes right before elections? At the heat of the campaigns, MPP party coordinators filled forms, helped party supporters get 10 numbers, and were doled 500 Ghana cedis and above across the country. The government bought the votes of the police and the other security services by giving them unexplained monies. Teachers received freebies called professional allowance. Now you want to pay what taxes? Please, government is not magic to dole out freebies. You have to pay. I am Kwesi from Oda. Please, state institutions, churches and companies who contributed to the COVID fund should go back for their monies. Now that we are being taxed for same, liars and criminals in government. Stephen from Insuta Boem. Good morning to you, KOD. The MPP people brought about incompetence into our governance system. I want to understand what incompetence means. Because it's confusing looking at what is going on now. KOD, good morning to you and your panelists. Ghana's agriculture depends largely on rain, fed with rain, which is unpredictable. We get floods in the rainy seasons and they destroy our crops, farms, limited water for domestic and individuals. Okay, your message is not quite clear. Send it again. Good morning to you. Long life to all of you. Thank you. Good morning to KOD. I wish you always invite Mr. Pratt every day. Good morning to you, Pan African TV. I love this station to the core. Without watching Pan African TV a day, I don't feel free. My mentor, Kwesi Pratt. I wish to meet you one day. God bless. I'm down blow from Brimso Apeusika. Almost 90% of the total revenue goes into compensation and interest payments. Yet they have the gut to tell Ghanaians they are better managers of the economy. From the budget, government seeks to increase revenue mobilization by 30%, which is unrealistic. You can't have an average record of 16% mobilization rate and expect to double it with this lazy approach. When the fundamentals are weak, interest payment will expose your budget. This issue is what then is the impact of those sloganeering policies on the economy. Managing the economy goes beyond appointing family and friends. And I think I've done my best with the messages. Thank you to you, Honorable Inusa Fuseni, for your time this morning. Thank you, Mr. Elvis Buta, for your time. Thank you, Mr. Platt, for your time. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Do have a very pleasant day. Bye-bye.
Hello, Ghana. I introduce you to the #1 combined harvesters in the whole universe, the World Combined Harvester. World Combined Harvesters are very efficient and drastically reduce post-harvest losses.